ISO. It's a difficult conversation to broach. Native ISO and dual native ISO, an even harder one. But that's what we're talking about today. Because I think most people have the idea of dual native ISO wrong, they have the idea of low light capabilities wrong, and Sony is not the king of dual native ISOs or even the king of a low light anymore. I think Nikon and Lumix have better options for 99.9% of videographers and filmmakers out there, and we're gonna get into that in this video. Now look, I get it. You might already be rushing to the comments. It's a bold statement. What do you mean? No other camera has 12,800 ISO dual native. Yeah, it doesn't. But everybody I know who shoots on an FX3, A7S III, any camera with that dual native of 12,800 constantly says they're throwing on ND or stopping down their lens. It seems like it's too much, most of the time. There are very few instances where it seems to be useful, because it seems to be useful to me in no light. It's not a low light king, it's a no light king, which is fine. But me personally, I'm not going out into the middle of the woods at night to shoot a music video with no lights whatsoever. I do think that other brands have it way better. And in this video, we're gonna talk about which brands have the best dual native ISOs, which dual native ISOs are good, which are bad, because there's quite a few, in my opinion, that I think are borderline irrelevant / useless, and which ones are the sweet spot that you should be aiming for. At the end of the day, the more light that hits the sensor, the cleaner the image will be, no matter your ISO, even if it does have a dual gain. More light is better. So what do you do when you can't increase your light anymore? Well, you flip to that dual native. Now, the first time I got to experience dual native ISO was with a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 6K. It has an ISO base of 800 and 3200. That is a 2-stop difference. And 2 stops is enough, but not quite. I find myself often with 3200 boosting it a little bit more in post by like half a stop. It was almost good enough. It was almost bright enough. I don't feel like ISO 3200 is a very good dual native. There's only 2 stops of space. I want a little bit more. Not much, just a little bit more. Now, cameras that have a dual native ISO of 4,000 or 5,000, I can really get behind that, because oftentimes when it's that high, you can push it even higher without increasing the noise too much or shifting the tint of the image too much. I find that it works very well. Lumix does this great, and Canon does this great. I think they're 2 brands that tend to offer this better. Lumix more so than Canon. Also, Nikon does a really good job at it as well. They were kind of the first to offer really clean dual natives of 4,000 and 5,000 and 6,400 that really work well and allow you to push your image. That being said, I think on the flip side, Sony's dual native ISO of 12,800 is way too high. I'm gonna be so real. I watched, and I'm completely blanking on the movie, A Complete Unknown, that's the name of the movie, Bob Dylan. If you haven't seen it, it's a phenomenal movie. The director and DP opted to shoot some scenes at really high ISOs. I could tell in theater, I could see the lines on the screen. I could see the sensor starving for light. I thought it was such a foolish idea. I don't think it looked good. It wasn't cleaned up enough. It could have been cleaned up, but it wasn't. I thought it was foolish. Now, people use the FX3 and they push it even harder because it can be pushed harder. And again, sometimes I'll see the lines, sometimes I'll see the noise, but it's great. If you're out in the middle of the woods, completely dark, you can see. That's cool to me. I think it's a cool gimmick. I wouldn't call it a feature. I just don't know when I'll ever be in the woods lit by only moonlight and I'll need to turn up my ISO all the way to 51,000 or whatever. I don't see that as a useful scenario. In fact, most of the people I know who shoot with ISOs of 12,800 as a dual native tend to throw on ND because it's too bright. And that just kind of ruins the point. If you're gonna have a dual native, you want it to climb up to where you need to be, not be too far. You're just overshooting what you're gonna need. And I just don't think that works. I am a huge, huge fan of those dual native ISOs between 4000 and 6400. The reason being, I think 6400 is the best dual native ISO you can possibly have, is it is 3 stops brighter than your average dual native ISO of 800. And I think that's just perfect. It's perfect. 3 stops brighter is what you almost always need. And if it's a little too bright, that's good. It's a little extra light in your sensor. If it's dark outside, oftentimes the only things clipping will be hard light sources, which are probably just gonna clip anyways. So it's a lot better than overexposing somebody's skin, for example. Now, it's only 1 stop less light than that 12,800 you're gonna be getting with the Sony FX3, for example. So when you use the Nikon Z6 III, it has that dual native ISO of 6400. I think it's perfect. It just looks good, it's clean, extra 3 stops, not 4. I think 4 stops is too much. If you look at camera breakdowns, actually, if you want to watch a video, again, Gerald and Nunn has some great ones on this. There are a lot of other people who do. When you push a normal camera past 3 stops, the image breaks, it gets noisy, and skin tones crack, usually right around 3 stops. So having that dual native be at 3 stops allows you to push your image in either way as much as you want without breaking it. It gives you maximum flexibility in between those ISOs. 4 stops is at the point of breaking. In most cameras, it's beyond the point of breaking. So I think that Nikon's really figured something out with that sensor. Now, that same sensor also happens to be in the Lumix S1 Mark II. And if you haven't seen it, there's a video. Gosh, I forget who made the video. It's actually Armando's video. I remembered it. I'm gonna link it down below. He did a comparison between the Lumix S1 II and the FX3. And in his opinion, in my opinion, in many other people's opinions, the S1 II did better. It has more detail and less noise. It gives you more opportunity to denoise it further yourself than the FX3 would. It just does look better and it retains a better quality image, and that is because of resolution. Now, you might have heard on YouTube and Instagram specifically that less resolution means larger photo sites, which means better in low light. And that's kind of true, kind of. The problem is when you have more resolution, for example, 6 or 8K, and you bring that into a 4K timeline, all of those pixels now reduce the noise by half. If your deliverable is 4K and you shoot an 8K image, you're now getting a fourth of the noise. That's great. You didn't have to do anything. You just removed a fourth of the noise because you're squeezing it into this tiny 4K timeline when your 8K image is this big. It's phenomenal. I shoot 6K a lot. In fact, the camera I'm shooting on right now records to 4K, but is downsampling from 6K. It means less noise. In fact, I'll show you what I mean right now. I am at my first ISO base of 640. We're gonna go up to its dual base of 4000. All right, again, this isn't anything incredibly scientific. I stopped down my lens a little bit. I brought my ISO up to 4000. Cool, you can see a lot more. Things were starting to clip. It got a whole lot brighter. You probably notice the image probably looks a little bit better now that I'm up to that 4000 because it's slightly underexposed, knowing I was gonna do this later. I'm gonna bring it up further. We're gonna go to 12,800. I'm gonna show you the difference between those two ISOs, and then I'm gonna compensate for it with my iris, of course, in my lens. All right, starting at T24, ISO 640. Sorry if the frame's a little different. I kicked my tripod, my B, same T-stop, 2.4, ISO 4000. We're a lot brighter. Okay, now we are at 6400. Jeez, it is bright. We are very, very bright now. Let's go up again. All right, this is just, really, 12,800. All right, let's stop down the lens. All right, I just went ahead, stopped down to a T5.6. It's probably somewhat noisy. There's probably a fat color shift. This camera is not supposed to be pushed this hard, but it can be, if I need it to. I've never had to push this camera this hard. The highest I've ever pushed it was 10,000, and it did totally fine, didn't have an issue. Now, my point in making this video is just to say you don't need this 12,800 ISO. This is gonna look a whole lot cleaner on a Sony camera with that dual native My point is it's too bright. I think 6400, an ideal dual native. It's a whole lot brighter. However, 4000 and 5000 are also great options. However, once you start pushing down to 3200, I think it's a little too dark. It doesn't push it enough. It's usable, but you might have to boost it a little more. And that is from experience. I have used dual natives on all of the major brands, including Red. If you didn't know, yes, some Red cameras do have dual native ISOs. I have used it on the Gemini 5K. I thought it was very useful. I think there are better cameras that do it though. All right, I'm popping back over to my original setup now. T28, 640, how I like it. A little bit dark, a little bit underexposed, a little moody. I am just going to reiterate that some ISOs are better than others, but some cameras process noise better than others. The reason Sony is such a low light king is because of the internal noise reduction. They reduce so much noise in camera, it looks clean. That, however, does not mean that the image is clean. I have heard so many people complain about Blackmagic and Red in particular being noisy images, when in reality, they don't know how to expose properly. And yeah, it's noisy. There's no noise reduction. It's raw. If you plug up your Sony camera, if you plug up your Nikon or Lumix or Fuji camera, and you decide, I'm gonna shoot raw today, ooh, you better add some more light to that sensor. It's going to be noisy. That's how it is. In fact, to a degree, noise is a good thing. You should have some texture in your image. In fact, I shot a short film. It was meant to look dark, so we shot it really bright and brought the ISO down in post as much as like 400 and 320, even some shots at 250 ISO, which is just like, by the way, in the cinema space, insanely low. It should almost never be that low. In fact, it was so low, there was so little noise, I had to add grain and a little bit of noise in post in order to make it look a little more real, because it just looked too clean, too digital, too fake and created. You want to avoid that to a degree. When you have so much noise reduction and compression, you're reducing the quality of your image. In Armando's video, which I have linked below, you'll see the S1 II compared to the FX3. And the key difference you'll notice is the S1 Mark II really holds on to detail even at high ISOs that aren't necessarily its native. When it gets pushed really hard, it leaves in detail. Yes, there's a little bit more noise, but you have the option to reduce that yourself to your liking. When the camera is doing it for you, you are left with less options to handle it in post. Now, to my friends who use Premiere or Final Cut, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to struggle with noise a little bit more than those using DaVinci Resolve. Get over on the right in LE. It's a coloring software first. It handles those things better. I find that I would rather shoot with zero noise reduction or noise compression in camera and handle it myself. Why? Because I think it's just better that way. Anywho, this was a very ranty video. I'm gonna end it there. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and until next time.